Assalamu alaikum. Today is April 21st, 2013. I'd like to welcome our audience to our first, hopefully, inshallah, recording of the Free Radicals. Joining to my right here is, actually I should introduce myself. My name is Omar Qayyum. I am Sporty Radical, although I'm not fully sold on the name yet. To my right here is Sadat Anwar, who is known as Sexy Radical. Was it?
Pretty Radical.
Pretty Radical, I'm sorry, I messed
Pretty
that.
sexy radical.
Pretty Sexy Radical. And to his right is Imad Ali. We dubbed you Abu Radical.
I'm alright with that.
You're alright with that. And to my left is Imam Shariar Sheikh, also known as Modern Radical. Very fitting name. Beautiful. Now, fellow radicals, let's get our game on here. We're here to discuss the tragedy that was the Boston Marathon bombing. Now, again, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there going on as to what happened. And like with all American tragedies, everyone's aware of what's happened here. But the information we have right now is two young Chechen brothers by the names of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, which is the youngest, and the oldest, who's the deceased Tamerlan Tsarnaev, who are allegedly accused of perpetrating this heinous crime, I should add. But I don't really want to get into the conspiracy aspect of who did it and stuff. That's what the legal process is, and we have due process. But more importantly is the Muslim response, and whether it was troubling or whether it was rightfully so. So the first thing here is like the closure of the mosques that we saw. According to the Huffington Post, the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, which is the largest mosque in New England, they announced on their website, along with a dozen other mosques, that mosques would be closed for Friday prayers. Mm-hmm. So what say you gentlemen on this? Was this the right thing to do? Was this premature?
I think it's absolutely pathetic, really. I mean, there are no words to describe it. In times of crisis, every community, any community, the first place that they gather in, or they get together and they address a crisis is a community center or religious center, in our case a mosque. Mm-hmm. The worst thing you want to do at a time like this is lock up a mosque. Right? I mean, this is where a town hall meeting should have been happening. This is where the elders of the community should have been there and should have said, okay, you know what, we have a crisis here at hand. Mm-hmm. There will be a fallout, a backlash on the Muslims. What can we do? The most worst thing you could do is close down a mosque for Friday. Perhaps it was done to win points or appease the mainstream, the Bostonians. But I believe it's going to further incriminate. I mean, it casts a suspicion on the Muslims. Because, what does a suspect do? If it is guilty, the suspect hides. Mm-hmm. Doesn't come out of the house. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what the Muslims did. And I think if an imam does it, it's truly very saddening, very disappointing.
Yeah, this is the mosque of Imam Suhaib Webb. So, and again, it's not his thing. Again, there were many other mosques that followed lead on this. But is there any Islamic justification you could go, okay, I know this might be a little bit far-fetched, but within our tradition, certainly if there's bad weather or inclement weather or something could be harmful for Muslims, there is an understanding that the congregational prayer is forfeited, or it's combined or something like that. So what about that angle?
Well, definitely if there is rain, or if there is extremely cold weather, or there's a traffic issue, certainly. But here we're not dealing with natural disasters or arbitrary, incidents where it's just impossible to get to the mosque. So okay, fine, Here we're dealing with an issue, a rising phenomenon of this suspicion towards Muslims. This was high time when Americans would have been listening to Muslims.
Gentlemen? Yeah.
No, I agree with Modern Radical. I mean, I remember once you said that, basically we don't want to be seen as caving into bullies. And with all due respect to them, I'm not in their shoes. I haven't undergone exactly what they've undergone, but somehow the feeling here from Canada for me is that American Muslims buckle really easily under the pressure. It seems like that to me. And I'm a big fan of Imam Suhaib Webb and that whole sort of group of American Muslim scholars. I won't go into naming them, but unfortunately it does seem to me like they buckle very quickly under the pressure. And this is a time that, as Modern Radical said, there should have been an open house. People should have been invited in, not caving into bullies, because what sort of message is that?
So regardless of the safety issues, then, because I think from the mosque perspective, it wasn't the cave in, it was just the safety of Muslims. Would there be retaliation? Could someone attack people?
But
or a bombing of, because we've seen the Sikh temple being attacked in America. Could there have been a repeat of something like that
Well,
on a Muslim worship
I mean,
center?
you might disagree, Omar, but the thing is, I mean, are we mice or men? And if there was an attack, perhaps that might have even helped us in giving us the sympathy factor.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what my two learned colleagues have said, traditionally in Islam, it has been reported that the Prophet ﷺ, anytime that even the wind turned rough or harsh, you know, the first thing he would do is to resort to the masjid, resort to the mosque and pray there. And
It's a
traditionally,
support base here.
Right.
right, and traditionally our way of thinking has been that the mosques are the places which are most blessed by Allah. So it makes sense that if you're in a time of crisis, you actually flock to the mosque.
Okay.
And not just you know, engage in communal activities and you know, make statements and stuff like that, but also to build a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that would have been the right thing to do.
Okay.
As far as the other factor, the safety factor that you brought up, I think that should have been an optional thing.
Right.
So if anybody felt that their safety was in danger,
They could stay at
they
home.
could have stayed at home. But but just closing the mosque totally, that's, you know, like somebody, if I was there, I probably would have gone,
Mhm.
you know.
Okay. Just.
If I may just add one
to
more
move-
thing, please, but the safety factor also is I mean, there's a limited threat here. They're not scared of bombs falling out of the sky. They're not scared of missiles. They're scared of what? Some
It's
hooligans,
suspicion,
something like
right,
this.
yeah.
So why couldn't they up the security to remedy the problem?
Okay, fair enough. Now, the other thing of the Muslim response that I found very disturbing was the takfiring or calling fellow Muslims non-Muslims. I mean, we all believe in the legal system from the Islamic tradition, and even the Western system, that there is a presumption of innocence before you deem someone guilty.
That's right.
According to the Huffington Post, Imam Talal Eid of the Islamic Institute of Boston said, and I quote here, "This is a person who deliberately killed people. There is no room for him as a Muslim. He already left the fold of Islam by doing that. In the Quran, it says, those who kill innocent people, they will dwell in the hellfire." Gentlemen, I mean, if you want to...
Look, again, this is caving into bullying. I mean, perhaps he actually believes that, but to me, it seems like this is just caving under the pressure. So those who kill innocent people will dwell in the hellfire. Does he apply this to Osama bin Laden? Does he apply this to George Bush? I mean, does he have the guts? Would he apply this to George Bush or to Donald Rumsfeld? So why is he applying it selectively here? Would be one of my questions.
And the thing is, this is completely betrays our tradition.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, the most hated person in Islamic history is perhaps Yazid bin Muawiyah, right? For his role, indirect role perhaps, or direct role, we don't, I mean, there are certain secrets. But nevertheless, he is maligned for it, for the martyrdom of Hussein radiallahu anhu.
The
And
grandchildren of the
even then, majority of the Muslims, you know, at least Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah have had a consensus, you cannot do takfir of a person because his belief and his criminal activities are, you know, you cannot consider, you cannot apostatize a person on the basis of their certain works until they themselves verbalize it that they're not part of Islam anymore.
And you're absolutely right. But is that just from the first sentence, this is a person who deliberately killed people. I mean, how the hell do you know that? I mean, there's no due process here. We have a legal system that establishes guilt.
Here. There's a
right?
presumption of guilt.
Presumption of guilt.
Until proven
innocent.
innocent.
And on that, you've already put his abode in hellfire and you know, saying that he's left the fold of Islam.
Well, I mean, to be really honest, I think he was in that sense, he was just making a general statement about, because there is a verse in the Quran which says that a person who takes a human life, he will, unjustly, will go into hell forever. So maybe he was quoting that as a general statement, just to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was perhaps quoting that as a general statement to apply to all murderers. But your idea, I can see why you're asking why is he applying it in this?
Yeah, I mean,
the
he's a
context
small-
of this.
It must have been inclusive of this
It's
person.
inclusive. It's not like he just threw it off the cuff, right? I mean, and you are an imam, right? You should be the most grounded in Islamic theology and Islamic jurisprudence before you make a statement.
No, but what I'm saying is that we haven't heard his whole speech. Maybe what he was trying to say was that murderers in general will go to hellfire, right? Now the rest of it, it could just be like a blanket statement.
Like George Bush.
Yeah, well,
But in the case of Imam Suhaib Webb, did he not specifically, in regards to this killed suspect, say that if he did it, he's not a Muslim?
Sorry, say that last part.
Did Imam Suhaib Webb say that he was not a Muslim
Uh,
or cast doubt on his Islam
well-
because of this act?
No, I don't have anything, or from what I've read, that they.
I think
they
it's
said
something to
that
do with the
this was-
pressure cooker. If you use a drone, it's okay, but if pressure cooker, now that's against
Yeah,
Islam.
that's against Islam.
That's not, you can't do that.
But okay, but going into the point that you're saying of Imam Sohaib Webb, I mean, the other disturbing part, again, same from the same Huffington Post article, was the refusal to provide last rites to these to these people. And again, I'll quote here, just that same Imam Talalid from the Islamic Institution of Boston said, "I would not be willing to do a funeral for him." And Sohaib Webb, from the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, again the biggest mosque in Boston area, is I don't think I could ethically lead a prayer for him, but I would not stop people from praying upon him.
Okay, if I can clarify for the non-Muslim audience as well, I think it's not in question here that whoever perpetrated these acts, and if these two boys perpetrated these acts, it was a heinous act.
Yeah.
It was an
Un-Islamic.
unjustified act
Yeah.
of terrorism. It
No
was
one
un-Islamic.
supports it.
Yeah.
But
No
the
one
point is that in our
wants it.
tradition, because somebody commits a sin, even a major sin, that does not automatically take them outside of Islam.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like a Timothy McVeigh. What Timothy McVeigh did was very bad. But if he wanted his, Catholic or whatever last rites read to him, there's a priest or there's some sort of a pastor, and it's his job to fulfill that obligation. So this is what I don't understand. Where would they draw the line? Would we say that, a Muslim who has stolen, we shouldn't perform, I don't feel comfortable performing
Or
the
who
funeral service for
takes
him?
interest, commits adultery,
Homosexuality.
I mean, these from our traditions, are considered
See,
sins,
sometimes
right?
liberals betray themselves because now where's all that talk about not being judgmental, and this is between him and Allah will be the final judge, and we can't call anybody a non-Muslim. Where is all of that liberal talk now?
Right.
And there's a normative tradition in Islam that simply cannot be violated under any circumstances. I mean, Allah is the only one who has a right to abrogate His law. And our normative tradition, it says that a person, no matter, unless he's actually professed kufr,
Disbelief, right?
If a person comes out, he comes from a Muslim family and he says, "Look, I no longer believe in God." Okay, it's pretty obvious you don't lead his janazah. You don't lead the last prayer on him.
Right.
But anything outside of that, no matter how heinous the crime, so modern radical would use a good example of Yazid bin Muawiyah, right? And what these people did, if they did it, was heinous. Okay. And me being a parent, I really feel for the parents of the 8-year-old who was killed. Just like I feel for the parents of all children who were killed all over the world.
Especially the ones that were killed a week earlier by American drone bombing. There was about
Right,
9 or 10 kids
Perfect
that were
example.
killed in the Vani village of, I think, Shogil, and a woman was killed as well. And yes, I mean,
Yeah,
I
we could
think
go on and on,
I think
you know,
they're
I mean-
almost human, aren't they?
Not to go off on a tangent, but should we be scared of giving our condolences not only to the families of the Boston victims,
But
but
the
to the
200
victims of the drone attacks as well?
200 drone killings of children, 200 children that have been killed so far.
But again, before we go off tangent,
I
guess
still
you-
think it's something to do with pressure.
No, we're not really going off tangent.
But
mean, this is a
I
very
guess
valid
just
point.
relating to funeral service, I guess the thing that really frustrates me and pisses me off again is the fact that the American government shows more courtesy or regard for the sensitivities. Someone like Osama bin Laden, you can say whatever you want about him. When he died, according to the reports, the U.S. military gave him his final rights. While they disposed of his body in the sea, from the reports they had Muslim chaplains who gave the final rites.
Yeah.
Right.
So if the U.S. government can show such magnanimity or courtesy towards the deceased, why is it that we as Muslims have to kiss ass even more and be like, no, this person has nothing to do with us?
And we don't infer from that fact that they gave Osama bin Laden a proper Islamic service before they buried him at sea. We don't infer from that the U.S. government are terrorist sympathizers,
No,
or that they
absolutely
agree
not.
with the
Absolutely
actions
not.
of the 9/11 hijackers.
I mean, how many KKK members have died and have had their, last rites in churches and stuff like that? I mean, how many mass murderers have had their final rites? They get their final meals, they get to say their last statement. There's certain rights that you give. And if at the end thing is that these people don't deserve it, well, if, again, this suspect here is guilty, he paid the ultimate price. He was killed.
Well, he was killed.
He was killed.
Capital
So
punishment.
he got capital punishment right there for his crime, right? So the job is done here.
I mean, let me say very frankly to our American Muslim friends, perhaps it is the pressure, perhaps you are scared. But since we're supposed to compete in good deeds, here from Canada, I think us free radicals would volunteer to come and perform the funeral service
Exactly.
Yeah, I
for
would
this
do it.
fellow. If there's no one in Boston, if there's no Muslim decent enough or upright enough or brave enough, courageous enough to perform the funeral service for him, I don't know, Imam Shahyar,
Oh, I
if you would be willing to do that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, absolutely, without question.
And to sum this thing up is, again, we've made a lot of criticism. I mean, what could we say to wrap things up here is what should the response have been? I mean, we have differing opinions, and on some things we can sympathize with. So what do you think our response should have been? When this thing first happened, once it was discovered that these suspects were alleged suspects were Muslims, and in the future and things to come, well, what do you think? So one statement each, I guess.
Well, I think the first response should have been a human one. It's a tragedy. People lost their loved ones. So we have to put ourselves in their shoes first.
Right.
Okay, the first response should have been to extend our heartfelt condolences to the victims and their families. Those should have been the first response. Second response is, well, listen, we do condemn this act, but we're not going to go overboard in our condemnation. So it should have been a dual thing.
Okay.
So, we do condemn this act, but that doesn't mean we're going to take these two kids out of the fold of Islam.
Right.
And because that would mean distorting our religious tradition. That's
Right.
something we're
And
not willing
betrayal
to
to
do.
ourselves, right?
Right.
Well, I think Abu Radical sums it up for me as well too. Definitely, we should convey our condolences to the victims of those killings, but we don't have to go overboard. We don't do takfir of these two boys. And as I said, I also send out my condolences to the victims of America all over the world. And just to turn the tables, I mean, we don't expect, or we shouldn't expect, Christians in Pakistan to close their churches after a drone attack. So Muslims shouldn't do this. And really, I don't think in this case, we should even blame the Pamela Gellers or the Robert Spencers. It was we ourselves, or the American
Incriminate
Muslims.
ourselves.
Yeah, who actually I want to distance myself from right now. They're the ones who had a cowardly response, and it's not the right one, and it's actually going to encourage the bullies even more.
Yeah, I mean, what's really ironic about this is that I was in the States for about a year, and I've seen that the Muslims in America are far better financial and professional, success than they are here in Canada. But unfortunately, in this incident, we've seen how hollow that is. I mean, unfortunately, this has shown that American Muslim leadership is not responsible. If it is either applauding or not even rising up and saying, no, this is wrong, this is the time to engage, this is the time to make it clear. We're not going to apologize for every nutcase that comes in the mosque and then goes out and does something else.
That's right.
It's not our fault. I'm not going to go out and spy and be a thought police to everybody. There could be somebody that comes to our mosque and has some dangers. Yeah, if I find out that they're in the process of doing something, my moral responsibility is. But no, I will not apologize. This is wrong. This is few people holding an entire community hostage. I will not accept that. They shouldn't either.
Okay, and on that note, I think we'll end our show, and Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us.